All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Chalice and Chains. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to be doing a video response to the Candid Conversations with Dell, Episode 6, Dark Age of Man Design Talk on Roleplay Cafe, where Jason and Dell had a conversation that involved a lot of things, but up to and including what to do about the section on words of power in their Dark Age of Man role-playing game. So if you're not familiar with that, it is up as a pay-what-you-want PDF on DriveThruRPG as of the time of this recording, November 4th, 2023. If you are watching this later or early into 2024, there may be, at that point, a full art physical copy available as well. But let's hope. But this video in particular is the one that I am responding to, and it was regarding the words of power section within their role-playing game. So I'm going to go over to the text here, and I'm going to show you essentially what it says. And so in here, words of power, this is describing kind of mechanically how the system would handle it. Some ideas here of the specific words of power, and then a little bit more here, a little bit more commentary here on what you could do. And then I'm going to give you some of my ideas on what we could do, or what I think words of power, how they manifest in the game as it is, and if it needed some more, let's say, mechanical crunch, maybe, or if it needed some more clarification, then perhaps something like true names could be used, and I'll describe that in a minute. Okay, so first, I want to talk about what is words of power. So essentially, in Dark Age of Man, you have your sort of quasi-fantasy Dark Ages England, right? That's the setting. And so within the document, within the role-playing game itself, it allows for because it's sort of pseudo-fantasy, it allows for the use of, say, magic. Well, the way that we've been playing the game has been a lot more realistic, a lot more in line with some of the fiction that this game was inspired by, right? Like the television show Vikings or The Last Kingdom, for example. Both of those have heavily influenced the creation of this game, as well as, I know, certainly my interpretation of the setting and how I am running my current chronicle. And within that setting, whether it is more realistic and historical or whether it is more fantastic, the idea of invoking words of power, right? Using a powerful force, whether that is invoking the name of God or Jesus, or one of the Norse gods, for example, whether that is saying a curse, laying a curse upon someone, or invoking an oath, giving someone an oath, right? Or even just boasting of, let's say, a past prowess or something to influence what you are trying to do in the fiction. Those are all examples of words of power, right? Now, you can see the mechanical part here, right, where he says words of power. So you roll your D12 plus whatever your attribute is, right? So, body, mind, spirit, luck, prestige, whatever, right? And versus the difficulty value set by the presenter to cause an effect or to avoid an effect used against you, right? So words of power effects are helpful but minor. Well, I disagree with that, and so I would say remove that entirely. Effect is the attributes used to achieve the word of power. Avoid is the attributes required to avoid a word of power being used against you, right? And then they give some examples. So boast of your prowess to be selected by your lord, or demoralize a foe, as an example. So if you want an example from fiction, in The Last Kingdom, and if you haven't seen it, there may be spoilers, so be prepared for that. At one point, Uhtred kills one of the famous Vikings, Ubba, who is famed fighter. He's a bit terrifying, and Uhtred defeats him in single combat. And then later, when he is being called in front of King Alfred, and sometimes if somebody will question his integrity or whatever, he will say, "I'm the man who has defended Wessex. I was the one who defeated Ubba in single combat. I was the one who won at this battle. These are my accomplishments," right? He's using that maybe as a boast in this case to bolster his credibility. And if you were to do it mechanically in the game, he would probably be using this he would probably be making a prestige roll to, see, it says prestige here, to convince the Witan or King Alfred to not punish him in some way, right? So I don't want to go too much more into detail in case you haven't seen it, but great show, watch it, right? Curses are also big deals, and I think in a Dark Ages setting of England, right, there are a lot of superstitions, and so that's why I don't really think words of power need to be defined in the text of this document, because if you're familiar with the setting, you can understand already what words of power would be and how they might be brought into the story and how they would be used, right? But there's a point, again, in actually, this happens both in Vikings, I believe, and in Last Kingdom. But one of the things in Last Kingdom is Uhtred is cursed by a witch or a, I don't know, a sorceress or something who his Danish enemies, have, and she is connected to one of the sword Danes. I forget which one. Some Bloodhair. I forget Guthrum, I think. And I'm sorry, I can't remember her name at the moment. But she basically curses Uhtred and says, things are going to happen. And so later on, Uhtred's wife dies, and he attributes it to the curse. And so that's a big thing. And his followers, too, especially one of his really good friends, Finan, believes in this curse and is really concerned about it, right? And that affects their actions and the things that they do, right? Oaths are also really important. Calling upon, making an oath to, say, your king or your lord, using a prestige roll. This can be a really big deal, right? I don't believe these have minor effects. These are big deal things, right? You could, praise for another living or dead to raise morale. So if you're on the battlefield and, in Vikings, they say, we are the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, right? I am Bjorn Ironside, right? We will prevail, right? Those are words of power mechanically, but they don't really need to be defined as such because I believe organically they produce the result that you want, right? Now, in actual play, if you go back and take a look on Roleplay Cafe at the chronicle that Jason ran about with my character Aethelwald, right? I several times invoked the name of God and Jesus and asked for a miracle, asked for a prayer, and those things. And because of the dice rolls and the bonus to my spirit roll, I was able to achieve those. And those were effectively words of power by invoking the name of God, right? Now, another example in the fiction would be in the show Vikings, 5th or 6th season. I think it's the 6th season when the Vikings return to England and they are trying to invade Wessex, and the young King Alfred at that point, they're on the battlefield, and he believes that he sees Jesus Christ on the battlefield. And so he's telling his commanders and his troops, like, Jesus is on the battlefield. He is with us. We will not leave. We will not flee. We will win the day, right? And that boosts their morale, that allows them to continue to fight, and they do win the day. So these are some examples of words of power that I think you can see, right, in the fiction of those two pieces that we talked about, right, Vikings and The Last Kingdom. And there's many, many more, but those are just a few examples. And then you can also see how we use them in actual play. So again, to me, words of power don't need to be defined in the text, or they could just be simply described in maybe a sentence or two as something above the everyday, the mundane actions of ordinary folk. But again, to me, the most problematic part here is words of power effects are helpful but minor. I believe that's contradictory to what words of power should be and are. So and this was brought on by a discussion about editing before the final piece is released, right? And so, but you can take a look at the conversation, and I'll link it in this video. This should be a major effect, as far as I'm concerned. Calling upon God or the gods to help you achieve an effect or avoid a situation could be invoking a word of power. It can manifest with an adjustment to your spirit role one way or another based on the narrative. But it doesn't necessarily need to be strictly tied to an attribute. So a curse would not always require a spirit roll, right? If you're calling upon God to curse your enemy, then sure. But but you may call up, use your prestige, right? If you're a bishop, a witch, a dark sorcerer, right? Maybe you're well known, and if you call down a curse on someone, perhaps it's your prestige that especially if you're a witch, right? That could very well be what you would use. So, you could use spirit, you could use luck, but I don't think you need to in those cases. And I don't think it should be defined in the text as linked to a specific attribute, because I think the fiction would demand the attribute role if an attribute role is even needed, right? You could also use luck to avoid a curse, or you could use mind or spirit based on, say, your beliefs or whatever. If you, for example, are a very logical person and don't believe in curses, right? This person is just a human. They can't curse me. I'm not afraid of their curse, right? That could be a mind role. Or I have faith in God. I'm a faithful servant of the one God or of Odin or whatever. I won't, this curse won't affect me, this, that, or the other, right? So those could be used as ways to avoid the effect of a word of power, right? So that's the mechanical talk, I guess, so to speak. And I wanted to briefly touch on the idea of true names and how true names might be a better way of using and defining words of power within Dark Age of Man. At least the default setting. All right, so true names, you can see good examples of this in the Harry Dresden books, right, by Jim Butcher, where true names are incredibly important when it comes to the supernatural realm, right? If you know the true name of a vampire or a fairy or whatever, then you have control over it, right? Well, excuse me, this could be done whether or not you are playing a more fantasy context, or even if you were doing it more quasi-historical, but you were including the supernatural. So, for example, if there are, let's say you're dealing with, say, demonic forces, or with even perhaps, the Norse gods or the demigods or whatever, right? Knowing the true name of, say, a demon who's ravaging the land and you've been called to deal with it, right? That could be a major source of power over that demon, right? So in a mechanical sense, you could use that to reduce the difficulty when it comes to overcoming that demon, whether that is in combat or through a battle of wills or whatever, an exorcism, whatever it might be, right? You could also potentially use true names for items of historical significance or mythology or whatever. So, if you have a sword and it turns out that it is actually the historical Excalibur, right, or something along those lines, right? It could be a sort of legend. And if you know its name, you can invoke its name to give you an advantage, right? Again, maybe it's in combat, or maybe it is in a morale roll saying, look, I hold the sword of Excalibur, I am the true king of England. We will defeat these pagan enemies and whatever, right? So, or if you're dealing with, say, druids and pagans, and perhaps you're dealing with supernatural forces, fey creatures or elves, the Aelfheim or whatever, knowing their true names as opposed to perhaps the nickname that you're given, or the name that they have put on as a disguise, will allow you to have a certain degree of power over them. This could even be used for, say, if you were playing in the default setting and perhaps you're playing, Saxons, and you come up against a witch, a Danish blood witch, or a pagan druid or something. That you might know them by a nickname, or they may have a name that is that they present to the world, but is not the name that they were given by birth, or alternatively, their birth name is what it is, but they actually have a true name that they were given by, say, their patron or whatever, the source of their magical power, and that name can be used to maybe help control them. Now, Beyond the Wall role-playing game, it has some good examples of this. I'm not going to go into that because Beyond the Wall is not currently a free or paid what you want supplement. So I would want people to purchase it because it's a really good, it's a really great game, great take on Dungeons and Dragons, and actually could be well used as a resource for this game as well. But I would say when it comes to invoking words of power in Dark Age of Man, it does not need to be mechanically defined within the rulebook itself. I would say any presenters who are presenting this game, you would look to the historical setting that you've set up, understand the people and the motivations of those people within this fictional setting. If they are superstitious, if they are religious, if they are, if they report to have had dealings with the supernatural and strongly believe in those, and if those are true things in your setting, in your game, then those will impact the fiction as a whole, and therefore words of power would be used. So it'd be up to you to decide as the presenter how you want to mechanically apply that. But I would be, if it were me, I would be hesitant to include any text, because sometimes when somebody who's new to the game reads the text, they want to stick to the text rules as written. But I think in this system, this rule set provides more of a framework for people to create these stories together. And my fear would be that if there is a defined set of rules, even loosely defined as they are here, that could be too restrictive on everybody involved. So that was my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on words of power in Dark Age of Man. I would encourage anybody to look at the chronicle that Jason ran for myself, Dell, and Brian of Stochastic Agency on YouTube. He ran a 4-session chronicle back on Roleplay Cafe, featuring my character, Brother Aethelwald, who also prominently features in my Saints and Sinners chronicle that I'm currently running. And then go ahead and check out the Saints and Sinners chronicle as almost a sequel, so to speak, to that first one. And you will see many examples of when words of power are used, but they will not be called out specifically in the text or in the game itself. So with that, I hope everybody has a great day. Happy gaming, and see you on the internet.